Tánaiste reports this morning of the banks not reducing the variable interest rate on mortgages makes for disturbing reading. As you are well aware, there are over 300,000 variable rate mortgage holders in Ireland who are paying on average 2% higher than anywhere else in Europe. That's an extra €4,000 a year. That's putting an intolerable burden on many families. And it's my view that if it's not addressed, it will lead to more homeowners finding themselves in arrears. Now, Tánaiste, there's a German group of MPs in the House for the past 2 days, and they're with us in the visitors' gallery at the moment. They're members of the Friends of Ireland in the Bundestag, and I had the pleasure of meeting with them this morning. And I think it wouldn't be an overestimation to say that they're somewhat amazed that mortgage holders here are paying 4.5% interest, as opposed to 2% in Germany. Now, Minister Noonan, on behalf of the Government, met with the Governor of the Central Bank and expressed the Government's concern at a routine meeting about a month ago. The Government said that he'd go away and he'd prepare a report by June, and at the time you said that you believed a levy should be placed on the banks if they didn't address or reduce the variable interest rate. Now, AIB have been before the Finance Committee and they've offered 0.25%. It's something, but it's by no means enough when you consider the extent to which I believe they're gouging these mortgage holders in terms of the amount they're taking, well above the cost of funding. The PTSB were before the Finance Committee yesterday, and notwithstanding the wishes and views of members of the committee, they too retorted to the standard banking language, obfuscated their responsibility to the taxpayer and to the mortgage holders, and refused to accept that they were rebuilding their balance sheets on the backs of the 70,000 mortgage holders that they have in their books on the variable interest rate. Today it's reported that the Governor of the Central Bank, that all he can say to the banks is that, and I quote, "It is advisable to reduce the variable rates to head off any political response on the issue." A rather weak response, I would have thought, from the Governor, somebody who I respect, but I certainly don't believe that that's the extent, or the true extent, to which the matter should be addressed.
Question, please, Deputy.
Surely the banks have got the message at this stage, Tánaiste. Surely, if the Government are expressing in the way that you would have thought they would their message. But clearly, they believe that this is just a cotton wool exercise on your behalf, that it's the softly approach. Do you believe, Tánaiste, that the banks should reduce the variable interest rate? Do you firmly believe that? And will you come out and address it today? And just as importantly, if you believe that, what are you going to do about it? Is it just a matter of going back and waiting till June, till the report comes from the Governor? Or will you now move and address the situation and impose a levy on the banks? They've been given adequate time. They know the concerns, if they're real concerns of the Government. They certainly know the concerns of this side of the House. Will you move quickly to address this matter? Make it very clear to the banks they either act now or you'll impose a levy on them.
Thank you, Deputy. Tánaiste.
Thank you. First of all, it has to be of concern to everybody that, notwithstanding, as our friends from Germany, who are most welcome here today, from the Bundestag, they're extremely welcome here, notwithstanding the fact that we had a banking collapse, as people are aware, which happened, as we know, Deputy, on your watch, and which cost the country a lot of money, much of which we are in the process of recovering. Nonetheless, given the portfolio of lending which the banks had built up, there is a very strong element in that portfolio, as you know, of mortgages where they're tracker mortgages, and those banks are losing money on those tracker mortgages. And part of the action of the banks in terms of the charges they're making in relation to standard variable mortgages is to seek to recover, as you suggested, costs in respect of the losses they have incurred in respect of tracker mortgages. No doubt there may be yet actions which can be taken within a European context with the agreement of our German friends in relation to the tracker mortgage issue, which perhaps would provide some relief into the Irish banking system. But that's a wider issue and not actually the subject of your question. I do think that the standard variable rate mortgages are excessive in terms of the cost. I've said that on a number of occasions. In recent days, the Minister for Finance and the Governor of the Central Bank have met in relation to the mortgage issues, and I understand that at their meeting the issue of mortgage interest rates was discussed. And as I said, there are issues for the banks both in relation to trackers and in relation to standard rate variable mortgages. And the Governor provided an update to the Minister on the ongoing research that he and his officials are carrying out on the issue of the standard rate variable charges. And the Governor and the Minister noted that the standard variable rates charged in Ireland are higher than other euro area countries and have not fallen in line with the ECB wholesale rates. The Central Bank has submitted its research to the Department of Finance. They expect to do that, Deputy, in the next few days. And Minister Noonan and his officials will review the research ahead of meeting with the 6 main mortgage lenders in the coming weeks. Now, essentially, when the Minister meets the main banks, and I've advised them that they need to consider their pricing policies in relation to standard variable rate mortgage holders. But if they are not inclined to, in fact, listen to the difficulties that people are facing as a consequence of the pricing policies, well then there are other mechanisms of addressing this, and I've referenced that before. I would anticipate that the Irish taxpayer, having bailed out these banks for extraordinary amounts following your own actions, that the banks would be wise to listen to the advice in relation to their pricing policies and to provide better deals for their customers. But they do have a problem in relation to the tracker mortgages, and if anybody is looking at the issue, you have to look at the whole of the problems which are faced by the banks.
Deputy Timmy Dooley.
Thanks very much, Tánaiste. Thanks for the history lesson, by the way, on the economy and where it got there. But maybe we'll talk. Maybe.
Deputy Dooley.
Maybe we can look at a little bit of recent history.
Frankfurt's way, yeah.
I wouldn't have thought, Tánaiste, that there are shivers running down the spines of any bankers based on the response that you have given. I wouldn't think there is any banker. I wouldn't think there is any banker minded to feel that you're about to impose a levy on the banks as a result of the approach that they have taken, the direction that they are taking as opposed to what government policy is. You're buying into the bank's Kool-Aid, quite frankly, Tánaiste. You've bought a big supply of it. Yeah. The notion that the tracker mortgages are the root of all evil, that's not the case. And it would be worth your while actually looking into that. And if that was the issue, don't forget the decision that was taken back in June 2012, the EU Council meeting, which you and others hailed as of seismic proportions. The decision that was taken was a phenomenal game changer, and that it had the potential to resolve much of the legacy issues, and within that could have dealt with the overhang from the tracker mortgage issue. But we discovered here on Tuesday that the government never even applied, because you now believe never applied for funding to the ESM under that decision, because you now believe that the banks, as we're told by people from the Department of Finance, are resolving the issue without recourse to the ESM. Well, Tánaiste, do you know how they're doing it without recourse to the ESM? They're doing it on the backs of the 300,000 variable interest rate mortgage holders in this state.
Thank you,
the balance sheets are being repaired. They are preparing, or you're preparing, to sell your stake in those financial institutions all on the backs of those 300,000 mortgage holders. And I think you need to come clean on that. And will you at least reiterate the statement that you made in the past, which was that you're prepared to put a levy on the banks if they don't acquiesce to what we all want to see, a rate reduction, an appropriate rate reduction that's somewhere commensurate with the cost of funds today rather than in the past.
Tánaiste.
Well, Timmy, you seem to be a bit of a Claire Bourbon in that I don't know how much you've remembered and how much you've forgotten, but you certainly, whatever way it is, you seem to have learned very little. This country needs to have a banking system that functions and functions properly. We were left, when we came in, after your depredations, which I said, like the Bourbons in France, you seem to have pretty much forgotten it all. And you're the Clare version. You're the Clare version of it. You're the Clare version of it.
Sorry,
Now,
order, please.
You want a properly functioning banking system. I'm not sure if Fianna Fáil is converted to that yet, but that is absolutely critical. And what we have in this country are two sets. We have banks which have two particular portfolios in relation to mortgages, the tracker mortgages and the variable rate mortgages. I've just said to you, and I hope some of the bankers are listening. I know you invited them in. When you were in government, they were in there at the point and on the evenings when the fatal decisions were made that wrecked the banks. That was your contribution to what happened. So when it comes to the banks, I don't expect the banks to fetch up being grateful to the Irish people. They seem to have collective amnesia at times. You yourselves, well, Fianna Fáil arranged a mortgage called the promissory note for this country of 10. They arranged a promissory note which was to be paid in 10 years on 30 billion. And by the way, they took an interest holiday on the first 2 years, the last 2 years of their government, and they then left us to renegotiate that. So when it comes to renegotiating better deals for our taxpayers in relation to banking, we have done that with the promissory notes. People from your party and all the other parties here told us that the changes, in fact, would not work. They've actually ended up saving this country an enormous amount of money. So as we resolve this issue with the banks, I can tell you that the people who are paying those rates will actually receive reductions.
Thank you.
And if they don't, there are other mechanisms, one of which is a levy, but there are other mechanisms as well, and it will certainly be my resolve to see that if the banks continue to turn a deaf ear to the discussion that's ongoing, expressed both by the Minister for Finance and indeed by the Central Bank, well then the banks will have to face other consequences.